Have you ever felt like the universe tests you, as if telling you to hold on before a change can occur? Maybe it's that golden opportunity at work. Maybe it's your relationship falling apart. Or maybe something deeper is happening. A quiet exam you didn't know you signed up for, testing whether you're ready for the life you keep asking for. Carl Jung spent decades studying these moments, the ones that feel too meaningful to be random, too precise to dismiss. He called them synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that cluster when you're standing at a threshold, when something in you is trying to break through. This video will walk you through Jung's map of how the psyche, as an extension of the universe, stages these exams, what they're testing, why they arrive when they do, and what it actually means to pass. By the end, you'll recognize the thresholds in your own life and know how to meet them without either inflating them or shrinking from what they're asking you to become. Stick with me until the practical section, where we'll give you a simple awareness practice to start tracking these moments in real time. Now, let's look at what Jung discovered about the nature of these tests and why they feel so personal. Jung defined synchronicity as a meaningful coincidence between an inner state, a dream, a strong feeling, a persistent image, and an outer event that shares the same meaning but isn't caused by it. These clusters swell at developmental thresholds when psychic tension runs high and a new pattern tries to emerge. In those moments, coincidences function like exams, showing whether your current stance fits the deeper pattern pressing forward. Two factors create the sensation of being tested: an inner image charged with emotion and an outer echo that mirrors it. The spiritual and emotional charge, what Jung called numinosity, often determines whether you'll even notice the outer reflection. This explains why meaningful coincidences tend to appear when you're emotionally saturated, stuck, or facing a major choice. The task isn't to explain them away or treat them like divine orders. The task is to notice the mirroring and ask what it's showing you about where you're rigid or blind. Jung's scarab story captures this perfectly. One of his patients recounts a dream of a golden scarab while defending a tight, rational posture in treatment. At that exact moment, an actual scarab-like beetle taps Jung's window. He catches it and hands it to her. The improbable timing cracks her certainty and lets a new attitude in. The test wasn't about beetles or miracles. The test was whether she could soften a defended position, so real movement became possible. The unconscious compensates conscious extremes, supplying what you omit. If you cling to a social mask or a single logic, synchronistic hints often point toward the neglected opposite: feeling, humility, trauma wounds. The coincidence stings because it makes your blind spot visible at the exact time you're trying not to see it. You don't need to heal everything overnight. All you need is to make one honest move toward what you've been avoiding. Here's a fun thing you can do as well. Leave the word GLOW in the comment section below to show your acceptance of the new and great things coming into your life. Synchronicity complements causality. It doesn't cancel reality testing. Passing the threshold means translating meaning into concrete action, softening a rigid attitude, admitting the shadow, making the phone call you're resisting, while keeping both feet on the ground. The universe tests your capacity to respond to meaning without abandoning responsibility. That leads us to the map Jung drew of where these tests show up most reliably. Jung defines individuation as the process by which a person becomes who they uniquely are. In individuation, Conscious and unconscious factors are coordinated rather than split, so life becomes more truthful and less imitative. The unconscious plays a compensatory role, correcting one-sidedness and nudging you toward balance. The ordeal is to cooperate with this correction without collapsing into conformity or narcissism. The first ordeal is loosening identification with the persona, the mask. The persona is a social compromise so you can exist in society. Name, title, function. It's useful, but two-dimensional. Jung warns that when ego fuses with the mask, the true person recedes, and the unconscious retaliates with symptoms, moods, and accidents. A common test here is honesty. Can you admit the gap between your role and reality? Passing means being able to function in society, while also not giving up your individualism. The second ordeal is turning toward the shadow with moral courage. The shadow holds what you disown, traits or wounds that feel inferior, shameful, or inconvenient. Jung notes that real progress begins when confession-like work brings these contents into view, where they can be seen, amended, and integrated. Can you accept what you fear? Your anger, your neediness, your ambition, so it serves life rather than acting out? The choice you had to make to repress these parts of yourself wasn't your fault. You split off what threatened your survival. The third ordeal is surviving self-inflation as collective powers break in. As deeper, impersonal content surface, what Jung calls collective archetypes, people often swing between puffed-up godlikeness and crushed insignificance. You borrow the power of an organization, a cause, or a vision, and suddenly behave as if you were a god. The test is being able to have humility under pressure. Can you recognize the borrowed nature of that power and refuse to annex it as yours? Furthermore, transference is a decisive test in the middle of the road. Jung shows how parental images migrate onto partners, leaders, healers, charging relationships with archaic intensity. He recounts a woman whose father complex made her view her doctor as a god, able to conduct miracles. Only when she found a transpersonal center did a real parting and love become possible in her relationships. The goal is being able to endure intensity in relationships without fleeing or putting people on a pedestal. There are two classic failures: retreating to an old mask or marriage to the abyss. Under strain, you can regress into the former persona, making life smaller, or identify with collective powers, playing the grand prophet or ideal disciple. Jung treats both as negative solutions that dodge the real work of becoming a distinct person. The test is being able to have endurance in the tension of opposites. Orientation to the self marks a new center of gravity. When the inflation risk is seen through, a midpoint between conscious and unconscious begins to gather. What Jung calls the self, a superordinate center you can never fully grasp. Individuation proceeds as the ego learns to revolve around this center rather than claiming it. Passing the test of the self looks like more reality, less pretense, and a steadier, quieter inner strength. Now we need to look at the hardest phase of all. The dark stretch where everything you thought you knew dissolves. Jung's alchemical lens frames deep change as beginning with dissolutions, confusion, reversals, and loss of control designed to break obsolete structures. This isn't punishment, it's metabolic. The old stance dies, rigid forms melt, false identities are broken. The test is being able to tolerate disorientation, especially when healing, without fleeing to quick fixes or hollow certainty. You see, when the unconscious takes the wheel, purpose hides in the background. As the persona loosens, fantasy and symptom pour in. One can feel pushed about like a figure on a chessboard by an invisible player. But Jung insists this loss of balance has a purpose. It's an attempt by the psyche to create a new equilibrium when ego solutions fail. You might lose your footing. You might question everything about life and how you've lived up to this point. That confusion isn't failure. It's the psyche making room for what couldn't fit in the old structure. Active imagination is the practical bridge through the dark. Here's Jung's method. Make the mood or emotion your object. Let it form an image. Then enter the scene as you would act in life. This converts frozen affect into workable images and returns energy to consciousness. The test is participation without literalism. Meet the figures fully, then translate the insight into proportionate, concrete steps. Fantasies are no substitute for living. These imaginations give insights into a new way to speak, choose, and behave. Sustained, honest dialogue with the unconscious eventually yields a changed attitude that includes what was split. Alchemy pictures this as the coniunctio, the union of contraries that generate something living and new. The test is being able to have patience in the furnace of your mind. Can you keep both sides present, ideal and instinct, faith and doubt, until a creative third forms? Here are two shortcuts to avoid: trying to reset the old mask or become the redeemer. In the heat, some retreat into a shrunken life that feels safe, hiding behind their old mask. Others merge with a manna-charged image and speak with borrowed absolutes. Jung warns that both moves are inflation in disguise. The test is modesty under numinosity. Drop the claim to superiority and let the surplus power fall into the self rather than into your persona. In his own ordeal, Jung drew daily mandalas and dreamt of a rain-soaked Liverpool with a sunlit island at the city's center, grasping that psychic health radiates from a living middle. During grave illness, Jung experienced a sequence of sacred unions and an austere command to return. He learned to say an unconditional yes to existence, including the box system smallness of daily life. The test is whether vision makes you more faithful to dishes, deadlines, and people. Synchronistic signs mirror an inner shift. They don't absolve you from skill, effort, or ethics. You pass when you soften rigid rationalism, welcome shadow material, and take congruent steps that fit both inner and outer reality. The new configuration is humbler, sturdier, and more alive. So how do you actually start working with this? Jung's map isn't meant to be memorized. It's meant to be lived. Here's one keystone universal awareness practice you can start today. Step 1. Name the threshold. In one sentence, define the life change you're seeking and the specific old stance likely to be tested. Approval seeking, control, denial of anger. Identify 1 or 2 shadow traits implicated. Write it down. Step 2. Hold and watch for mirrors. For the next 7 to 14 days, keep a brief log of charged dreams, repeats, and improbable echoes around the issue. When something stings or repeats, ask, what attitude is this mirroring, and what is it asking me to integrate or relinquish? Step 3. Enact a fresh micro-shift. Choose one small, concrete act that embodies the revised attitude, a boundary, an honest correction, a repaired omission. Complete it within 48 hours, then note any change in inner tone or outer feedback. The work isn't to hunt for magic. The work is to notice when life mirrors what you are refusing to see, and then to respond with something real. What did you need then that you never got? Maybe it was reassurance. Maybe it was being asked what you actually wanted. Maybe it was rest. You didn't choose the wound. You were surviving. Now you get to choose the repair. You're not a failure for needing the tests. You're on a journey. The universe doesn't punish you for no reason. It trusts you enough to show you what's next. It won't always be fun, but the truest growth happens when tension and pressure is applied. Then you become a brilliant diamond. Shine on, my friend. Thank you for joining me on this exploration into how the universe tests you before changing your reality. If this resonated, please let us know your experience with universal tests in the comments below, and subscribe for more journeys into the depths of practical psychology, philosophy, and personal development. Until next time.